everybody. Welcome to the Talking Disney podcast. And we're so excited today. Today we are talking about the fourth Walt Disney animated classic. It's our first time we're talking about one of the golden era films on this podcast. We do in random order. We're talking about Dumbo. So get ready to talk some cuteness. This is going to be really fun. And I'm Rachel, and Stanford is here.
Hi there. How's it going?
Yes, and very, very excited that we have a special guest today for the podcast that my friend and fellow Disney fan, animation fan, Eli Sanza is here to talk about Dumbo.
Hey, everybody. How are you?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
I know. It's so great to have you on the podcast, Eli.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. This is a movie that I love, and I want to talk about it.
Yes. Well, the part of the reason why I wanted to have Eli on the episode is because I felt like, because obviously there's some controversy when it comes to Dumbo, and I felt like it was a little bit weird, I guess, for like two white people to be talking about issues about the film. Yeah. And so I was like, who do I know that's an animation expert that's a person of color that would be willing to come on my podcast? So thank you, Eli.
No, you can always come to me if you need the African American perspective.
I love it. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing about this movie, and we'll talk more about it, but you know, it has the controversy, and I totally understand why it has the controversy, but sometimes I feel like we have a little bit of a throwing the elephant baby out with the bathwater kind of a situation here, because there's a lot of really good things about it. And Stanford, do you remember like the first time you ever saw Dumbo? Like obviously it came out.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1941. You know, I don't, but I think I was a kid, and honestly, probably my first exposure to it was the music, because we had a lot of those Disney storybooks that had an audio component to it. I mean, I know this will age me, but they were little records. You know, they were little records. I'm not sure if I had any that had cassette tapes. Those might have happened when I was too old. But I can't remember not having Dumbo in my life, and I've always loved it.
I remember thinking it was very sad. The Dumbo was so sad, and sometimes as a kid I didn't really like to watch sad movies that much, and I remember just thinking, oh, Dumbo and Pinocchio is scary, Dumbo's sad, and Bambi's sad as well.
Yeah.
I remember going to
tragic.
Yeah, I remember going to Fantasia as a little girl, but probably my bigger memories of Dumbo have to do with the attraction at Disneyland. You know, that's so iconic.
Oh yeah,
as far as Disneyland.
Yeah,
and there's actually two. I was thinking about this week that it's one of the only attractions in Disneyland, not including Hollywood Studios, that has two movies that has two attractions.
Yeah, the spinning Dumbo ride and then Casey Jr. Railroad.
Yeah,
which is also super fun too. You know, I love both of those.
Yeah, and I just had the chance actually to go to Disneyland, so that was really fun. We went to D23 and I went to Disneyland for a day. I didn't get to do Dumbo, but it is just so iconic, and I definitely remember riding it as, a little girl.
Yeah.
And so that's probably more my memory. What about you, Eli?
My memories of Dumbo?
Yeah.
That was a movie that I watched later in life. I didn't own that movie. My family owned a lot of VHS tapes of Disney movies as kids. That one wasn't one of the ones we owned. I watched that one later in life, and it was just as good as the movies that we had. We had Bambi when I was a kid, and then I discovered Dumbo, and it was in the same class. I thought it was like, I thought that it was, I don't like to overuse the word masterpiece, but I think that it applied to that movie, because I thought it was like, it's actually like, it was like a little over an hour, that the length of that film, and it was like really short, like almost like a featurette, but it didn't feel too short or lacking in any sense. It felt like a completely satisfying film experience that had a lot of funny moments and a lot of drama, and I remember loving it and loving it even more the more I watch it. And to this day, I still love it.
Hmm. Yeah, I love it too. I love underdog stories, whether sports stories or any kind of underdog story. And that's what I think Dumbo at its heart is. It's this underdog story. And in a lot of ways, it's actually, even in the making of the movie, it's kind of an underdog story. Because
Right. Sure.
they had gone crazy in debt, like rewriting and rewriting and rewriting Pinocchio so many times, redoing huge passages. Same thing with Bambi. Same thing with Fantasia. And so they Walt had read this little book of this elephant with the big ears, and he thought, this is something we can do, that we can just get done and we can get it out, and it can help us to regain some of this money.
Yeah, and it was a very low budget film. He wanted it to be low budget so that they could make so that it would be easier for them to make money off of it. Because Dumbo was one of the only profitable films of the first 5 animated movies Disney made. That one was the only one that actually made money due to the European market being cut off by World War II.
Yeah, after Snow White, that's definitely true. Stanford, yeah, what do you think about, I don't know, just about Dumbo and about how it had sort of a little bit of strange origin?
Yeah, the orange is interesting, isn't it? And thanks for sharing those facts, both of you. And I think it's interesting too, just as you mentioned, the runtime is short. It's really compact, and I think we know this clearly. Some of that was done for cost cutting, but it's such efficient storytelling. One, I think, other interesting thing of note, just historically, is that, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Walt Disney and some stuff about Dumbo set to be on the cover of Time magazine?
Yes.
In early December of 1941, and then it got, the Pearl Harbor attack happened, and then that all got scrapped. And I've just often wondered, would Dumbo have even made more money, or been more successful, or what would things have been like, had that sad day gone differently?
Because it was going to be on the Christmas cover of Time magazine.
Yeah, huge.
Huge back then. And so I have this book here. It's called, if you're watching the video, it's Walt Disney, The Triumph of the American Imagination by Neil Gabler. Or Gabler, I'm not sure. And it's a really big book. Look at this. I've been listening to an audiobook off and on. I'll just kind of listen to it in little spurts for a long time. And I like to listen to it when I do go to Disneyland. I'll listen to it when I'm at Disneyland, because there's just something kind of cool about that. And I still have something like 6 hours or whatever left. But I'm getting close. But it's a huge book, and it's a good book. But I wanted to read a couple little portions of what he says here about Dumbo, and we can talk about it. So the first thing he says, even better, from Walt's perspective, Dumbo required none of the special effects that had slowed the production and added to the budgets of Pinocchio, Bambi, and Fantasia. Dumbo is an obvious straight cartoon, Walt proclaimed. I'll deliberately make it that way. It's the type to do that with. It's caricature all the way through. So what do you think about that, Stanford?
Well, I mean, I completely agree. And that's one of the things I think is so just charming about it. I think I often say about this, or think this about so many Disney films, but the character art is just so perfect. It's just so, the characters are so fantastic in it. And
that's so true.
And I was marveling about that just with this rewatch, getting ready for the podcast, just how much I love everything from this, the storks to all the circus animals, to the circus performers, and the clown, everything. I just love everything about the look of the film. And I think and it's true. Again, there's not a lot of effect shots. I've wondered about that scene where they're setting up the circus tents. That seems to be, with all the rain and stuff, I think that's pretty impressive, the way the animation. Yeah. And then, of course, the pink elephant sequence, which maybe that's not necessarily full of effects animation, but it sure is original, and artistically so interesting. Particularly more as an adult. I think as a kid, I was kind of freaked out about it. But I like it. I really like it now.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of scared of it as a kid, but now I just look at it as, oh my gosh, they're so creative. It was
I know, right?
so fun. I agree with you there. We'll talk, but I really like it says, Ward Kimball remembered being waylaid by Walt in the parking lot one day and being told he was going to start on a circus picture, animating a scene in which crows sing a song about seeing an elephant fly. Walt then recited the entire story in 5 minutes. And listening to him tell the story, Kimball said, clearly recognizing that Walt had told the story in what for him was record time, I could tell that the picture was going to work because everything sounded right and it had a great plot. So, first of all, jealous of Ward Kimball. Can you imagine having Walt Disney himself tell you the plot of Dumbo?
Have him pitch the story to you?
Man. So
mackerel.
Yeah. But yeah, do you agree, Eli, that part of the reason why it works is just this really tight script?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Like most of the things that Walt Disney pitched were like really, felt like they were being told by a genius storyteller, and it was very evident in this film because one of the great things about a lot of animated Disney movies is that the story is really simple, and simple stories are really great vehicles for having great characters because you can focus on the characters, and the characters are really important because those are the most memorable things about the movie. And they were able to focus on really making a lot of great Disney characters because the stories were so tight and simple and not complicated at all.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that so often the case with Disney through the course of the company's career history that the movies that they made that were kind of the B projects, that were sort of the financial, the little bit slash money grabs, kind of that you could qualify, however you want to term it, that those are the ones that do end up kind of ringing the most true with audiences. Like a lot of times I feel like their super ambitious films are not the ones that have that lasting as much. I mean, people love all Disney films for one degree or another, but I don't know, you just think about like Lion King versus Pocahontas, you think about about Cinderella versus Alice in Wonderland. You know, there's just a bunch of examples, and I think it's kind of interesting.
Lilo and Stitch was actually made on a budget too, because Michael Eisner wanted that movie to be made so that they could cut back on the budget and make profits the same way Dumbo was, the same reason why Dumbo was made. And Lilo and Stitch is kind of more popular than something like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which they were.
That's a good example.
Good point.
Epic thing.
You could even say like Wreck-It Ralph versus something like Princess and the Frog, you know, kind of a thing. Something really ambitious versus something. And so, I don't know, it's an interesting thing. I like this too. And there was another reason they were able to make Dumbo so quickly. Walt, for the first time, had removed the burden of expectation for perfect animation, meaning that the animators were not to agonize any more than the story crew had. In fact, he assigned many of the newcomers to the picture. I was one of the poor boys, animator Bill Peet said. They put all the rich boys, the top animators, making the big salaries, working on Bambi. They wanted to make it a gem. So that's kind of interesting, too. It's kind of a similar thing to Lion King.
Yeah.
You know? And so, it's just this, like, scrappy little movie. And I think that when he says, because a lot of times we hear this, in the animation community, we hear this, something's a cartoon. It's kind of a little bit derogatory almost. But I think what he meant is just that Dumbo is one of just the most appealing, cutest characters in the history of movies. Like, he is so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, no one can deny it. He's so
Absolutely.
cute.
He's so cute. The instant he shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very appealing character design.
Oh, absolutely. I just was marveling at that again this watch, because I mean, he's relatively simple but so adorable. the masterful way, just even how they animate his eyes. Everything about it, so good.
Mm-hmm. And another interesting thing about this is a ton of the 9 old men were involved in the movie at one stage or another, at least, which is fun. I mean, I love the watercolor look of the whole movie, and they did try to kind of emulate that in Lilo and Stitch, which is fun. That was same kind of watercolor look. I love that. I think it's so, and it really fits a circus theme, I think.
Oh yeah, that's true. It was really just a good film.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the actual movie. So we start out with Look Out for Mr. Stork, and you have your stork, and he's giving his little bundles to all the different people, all the different animals.
and speaking of cuteness, I mean, that whole scene is so cute. I mean, because again, baby animals, are so cute, and then animated at such a simple but really a high level. I mean, just the expressions they're able to, the animators did with when the little mama, when the mamas were receiving their baby animals, is just the most adorable sequence, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't help but think of is it Partly Cloudy? Is the one with the stork?
Yes, that Pixar did. Yeah. Yes, I was thinking about that too.
Yeah.
They had to clearly have been inspired by Dumbo, don't you think?
For sure.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah, that reminded me of Dumbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a perfect way to kind of set the scene, and when you see Dumbo, like, just because he is so cute, the fact that these catty elephants, I like to call them, that they're so mean that you're just like, what is wrong with you? Like, he's so cute.
Yeah, leave him alone. He's a cute. He's not cute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those elephants are the worst, aren't they? Yeah.
And the music was written by Frank Churchill and Oliver Wallace, who also worked on Snow White.
They did some great stuff with Snow White and Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I like the songs. Even the Casey Juniors coming down the track. That sequence is so cute.
It's my favorite, and again, I love that music. That just takes me back to my childhood, because again, I think I had that on some kind of a record, and I just listened to that song over and over and over.
Yeah. One of the things I loved about that movie was how the details that Walt Disney puts into those movies. The train in that movie is completely anthropomorphized, and it's
yes.
That's true.
And isn't it just great? I just love it.
Completely unnecessary, but it was totally fun to see.
Yeah.
It really did make the song kind of come alive. And the other thing that I noticed this time that I had never noticed before is when I don't know if it's just because he's late dropping Dumbo off, but he sings Happy Birthday to Dumbo. And that's got to be the only time certainly in a Disney animated film that they sing the traditional Happy Birthday.
Oh yeah, I never noticed that.
Yeah, it's a good observation, Rach. I'm not sure.
Because do you know that
I think your listeners can challenge that, but I'm with you. I don't think there's another one.
Yeah, because did you know that somebody owned the copyright for Happy Birthday for I think it just expired, went into public domain. Yeah. And so for years, anybody that sang that in a movie,
they'd have to pay.
If you looked in the credits with all the songs, they had to pay a royalty.
Yeah.
And it was annoying because that song was expensive.
Yeah. So they would try to not do it. And again, usually it had to be in the credits, and it's so funny. I know you don't even think of that when you're a kid.
Exactly. Rach, can I interject just one quick thing to you about the whole this birthday or the Dumbo drop off sequence? Initially, when the Look Out for Mr. Stork song is happening and everybody is getting their babies except for Mrs. Jumbo, I just think instantly, the way that they animate her, you fall in love with Mrs. Jumbo because she, you can tell like this sad look on her face. I mean, she's so excited. She's thinking that maybe her baby's going to arrive. And then when it doesn't, and she looks so sad, I think instantly you feel sympathy for her, which then carries it through the film, And again, just another tribute to the excellent storytelling and the stellar animation.
Yeah, and they do that all. Mrs. Jumbo, aside from, I guess if you count Baby Mine being her talking, but it's not really. But she only speaks one time in the film, and that
Dumbo Junior, isn't it? She says the name.
Yeah, and it's all through her. So it's all through her.
Yeah,
expressions, the animation, everything like that. That it's just so well done.
Yeah, it was the animation that made her likable. It wasn't anything else but just the pure talent of the artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the Baby Mine sequence comes later than I remembered. For some reason I was thinking it was right after the pyramid toppling, but it's actually pretty late.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting. They have Verna Felton, who does actually voice Mrs. Jumbo, that one word. She was, I don't know if she's officially a Disney legend. I assume she must be, but posthumously. But she was a legend, whether it's official or not. An incredible voice talent for
better be a
Disney
legend.
Yeah, I bet she is. We'll have to check. I'd be surprised. She's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, she was in Jungle Book. She was Fairy Godmother. She was Aunt Sarah in Lady and the Tramp. Who was
and the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah, the Queen of Hearts. You're right. Absolutely.
All right. Yeah.
So she was incredible voice actress. And Cliff Edwards is another one that was very talented. And
Sterling Holloway is the stork, isn't he?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. He's the stork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the one who sings Happy Birthday.
Yeah.
I love him.
I do too. Isn't he just terrific?
Oh yeah.
And so these catty elephants, they see the big ears and they say, "Jumbo, you mean Dumbo?" And it's like,
so mean.
I know, so cruel. What a cute little Dumbo.
So then we get the Roustabouts song, and I actually feel like this song is more problematic than the Crows song, personally. But again,
I agree with you.
I'm not, it's not my community. So, but I thought we talk about some of the lyrics a little bit. It just says, "We work all day, we work all night, we never learn to read or write. We're happy-hearted roustabouts. When other folks have gone to bed, we slave until we're almost dead. We're happy-hearted roustabouts. We don't know when we get our pay, and when we do, we throw our pay away. We get our pay when children say, with happy hearts, it's circus day today." So I feel like that's way more problematic than just some silly crows. What are your thoughts?
I will agree with you there, because it's like it's implied that these people making the tents are African Americans, and the lyrics are based on stereotypes about African Americans, about how they're. If you just read the lyrics, you can see what those stereotypes are, because they're pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't know how to read. They don't know how to use their money.
Exactly.
That they're basically slaves. They don't know how to write, and they're just kind of big goofs. They're just happy-hearted roustabouts.
But they're happy-hearted roustabouts, so it's okay.
So and I didn't like how they were portrayed, kind of pouring out of the rail car too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's a whole bunch of them in there. It's like, how do they fit all of them in this car? It just it bothered me. So I'm happy to get your perspective on this, Eli, because I was wondering about those lyrics. I mean, I was wowed by the animation in the rain. With the rain and that sequence has always interested me. Also, because I like how they animate Dumbo in it. How he's kind of helping, but then also like continually scared and kind of running back to his mom. But it's just cute, and interesting. But then this other stuff's going on that more as an adult, I'm just thinking, wow, this probably isn't that
Yeah,
great.
you know what? When I watched this movie as a kid, you can't tell the race of the people because it's so dark. You think that these guys
Yeah,
working on the circus are just silhouettes, and
right.
also I couldn't understand the lyrics either. So it wasn't a major problem when I was a kid. It's just
Hmm.
when you get perspective on it as an adult, you realize these things and the
Yeah,
origins of them kind of
yeah,
problematic.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And the thing I think, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about this too, but the thing I think about the problematic elements of Dumbo is that the overall message of Dumbo is so positive. The overall message is about tolerance and acceptance and loving, and the things that make you different are the things that make you special. And there's so many positive messages in Dumbo that I think it's a real shame to, like I said, throw the elephant out with the bathwater. that it has so much positive that people need to hear and that we need to talk about, that I feel like any kind of observant, active parent could easily sort of sway the conversation from maybe the more problematic. We could talk about that. Certainly, you don't want to deny it, but they can still watch this movie and have a really positive discussion with their kids about judging and people that are different and when they feel different, and so it just seems like the very message of the movie is so positive that it outweighs a lot of these negatives to me.
Yeah, I actually agree that I loved one of the reasons I love the movie so much is because of the positive message. And if there's anything in the movie that you don't that you disagree with or that you don't want your child to take away from, then it's your job as a parent to guide them in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I still hold that any Disney movie that you can even ones that I don't particularly like, there's a positive message in every single Disney movie. There's something you can say
Yeah,
that you can
correct.
tell your kids. That's what I think. But none of us have kids, so we
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So they end up, the elephants are mocking Dumbo, and Mrs. Jumbo gets really upset, and the people, the clowns and stuff, are also, and Miss Jumbo gets very upset, and so she gets encaged, and so she's not with, and that's really sad for Dumbo. And oh my gosh, when Dumbo cries, don't you just, it's like, oh.
Your heart just
God,
breaks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for him.
Yeah, and people are calling Dumbo a freak, stuff like that. It's like, woo, woo.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I always thought this, but Mrs. Jumbo is so justified in her behavior. It's
Yeah.
not.
I
Yeah,
didn't even mind that. Yeah, it seemed justified to me too.
yeah.
I mean,
She's just protecting her baby from these crazed humans that are being horrible.
I agree. They call him a freak. They say I wouldn't eat at the same bale of hay with him, and pretend you don't see him. And that's what Timothy Q. Mouse hears. And I love Timothy Q. Mouse.
Such
He's
a
the best.
great character.
Yeah. I sent you guys a little clip because there is this idea that part of the reason why they picked a mouse, Timothy Q. Mouse, is to be friends with an elephant, is because there's this thing that that elephants are afraid of mice.
Yes.
And so that it was like an unlikely friendship. And I sent you guys a little clip from the Mythbusters crew where they were in Africa and they decided they were going to test. I'll put a link in the description section if you want to watch this.
Yeah, for sure.
But they wanted to test whether this could be true. And going into it, I am positive there's no way this is true. There's no way that an elephant is afraid of a tiny little mouse. And they did the test 4 different times. And each time the elephant stops dead in his tracks and moves back. Like abruptly stops.
Isn't it fascinating? I mean, it's like,
it really
how does that work? The elephants are so huge.
Yeah, they tested it very thoroughly. It
Yeah.
was like undeniable that elephants were actually scared of mice.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So that's why they picked Timothy Q. Mouse, and that was a big. We're not going to talk much about the new version, but I did miss having a Timothy. I didn't feel like they had a Timothy Q. Mouse character, and I did miss that element in the new movie.
Absolutely, because he's just one of the best characters in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he saved Dumbo practically by
Yeah.
cheering him up when he was feeling down. That's why I liked him so much.
Me too.
So Timothy Q. Mouse, he says that he's going to make him the most famous. And so he decides, he kind of scares the gossips. He says, we've got to give you an idea to make you famous. And so that's where he gets the idea of the circus master of the Pyramid of 17 Elephants. And the Timothy kind of is able to sort of convince through creative shadow puppets that would convince him of the 7 elephants, and I mean the 17 elephants, and or 7, and so they do this whole sequence. And how do you think they do is sort of capturing this sort of feel of a circus? Did you ever get to go, Eli, to a circus?
I never went, sadly. I have never been to a circus. I've just seen them depicted in the movies and the TV shows, and I have to say, this could just be personal taste, but it doesn't seem like my cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to go, Stanford, to a circus?
Yes, I did. My dad was a management consultant, and one of his clients handled the local advertising whenever Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus came to town. So I got to go a few times when I was a kid, just because my dad would get tickets through work, and so I'm kind of couching that because it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. And also, when I went as a kid, the circus was always just it was in the sports arena. It was in like the Salt Palace back in the day, or then it moved to the Delta Center. And I'm not sure I ever saw the circus in the Delta Center. We'd always go back in the day at the old Salt Palace here in Salt Lake City. But regardless, so some of that charm wasn't there. At least that I view it as charming, like with the train and the circus tent, and all that stuff. Kind of that circus aesthetic that I think the movie portrays so attractively. But still, though, when I went to the circus, I mean, there were animals. They had the elephants come out and the lion tamer and all that stuff that clearly they don't do anymore. And then on Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus is no more. They've shut it down. But,
I went in like 2015, something like that, or 14, something like that. I went to the Ringling Brothers, and that was a really fun experience. And there's just a certain panache and just flair to the circus. That's
I mean, the ringmaster, as he's portrayed in Dumbo. Mm-hmm. Kind of what he was like.
Yeah, and if people want to watch a really interesting documentary, last year on PBS, their American Experience, they had a great documentary all about the circus, and it was like basically the first sort of American kind of art form in a way, that it was that it all started in America and then sprouted kind of out of there. So it's an interesting thing. And they I think they capture that sort of feel. And I really like how they use sort of the shadows for the characters.
Me too.
For the human characters for most of it. And I really like the way they draw the clowns and their environment and that whole thing. I don't know, it just looks really cool.
Yeah,
they're so fast. They're going so fast.
The clowns are very very off-putting characters, but they're drawn in the best way.
Yeah. And so the gossips, the catty elephants, are all injured after the fall, and so they decide to they kind of force Dumbo to be turned into a clown. So that's when you see the clown fireman, and they have Dumbo in in the makeup, the clown makeup, and you see him crying for his mom.
Don't you just feel for Dumbo too, because he looks so scared up there?
Yeah.
The clowns are just doing their clown thing, and Dumbo just looks horrified the whole time, and it breaks your heart.
It's so sad.
Well, they did a good job selling how terrible that was, though, because before that started, the elephants all said that like being a clown was like the lowest possible thing you could be. So it was really like really a horrible thing, and then Dumbo is like forced to like do this thing while his mother is locked away. So it's like he doesn't want to be doing this. He wants to be with his mom right now, and these clowns are like the least funny clowns ever, and these of course part of their acts. It's really sad.
So true.
Well, and so then this is when we get the baby mine sequence. So she's Miss Jumbo is in the trailer, in the cage or whatever you want to call it, and she can barely put out her trunk, but just enough that she can rock her baby, rock Dumbo, and she sings Baby Mine, and that's sung by a singer named Betty Noyes, and who did the. It's interesting. She did the dubbing for 2 of the songs by Debbie Reynolds in Singing in the Rain, which is interesting. So she was a big musical dubber.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I love Baby Mine. I think Baby Mine is so beautiful.
I agree. That song is like very good at selling the emotion, and like I get teary-eyed thinking about that sequence, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so do I. Every time I watch it, I cry. It's really emotional. Yeah,
it's so good, and you just feel that moment is very emotionally true for both the characters. You really feel it
because you were rooting for him to get with to be with his mom, and then they finally are together for a brief moment. So you like really feel for Dumbo in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. When Timothy Mouse is taking Dumbo out to to Mrs. Jumbo's cage, one little thing I noticed this time, and maybe I've noticed it before, but little Dumbo grabs Timothy's tail like he's holding. I mean, that's how he's holding his hand. You just think, oh, there's just this little, baby elephant who just needs that. And then when he gets to Mrs. Jumbo, I was like, forget about it. How beautiful that is. And again, no, I mean the song is beautiful, and that really sets the tone. But that animation is so fantastic that here it's an elephant's trunk that is conveying a mother's love. I just think these guys were so good. They were so good at their craft. It's just
one of the main animators who worked on the elephant in that movie was Vladimir Bill Tytla.
Oh yeah, Bill Tytla. Okay.
Yeah, he was the guy who he animated a lot of scenes with the dwarfs like Grumpy and he did Stromboli and Pinocchio. And so he was good at doing like those kind of characters, but like he wanted to do something different with Dumbo. He wanted to try something more sensitive and less angry.
Yeah.
and he just to test his art skills. And so he was the one responsible for a lot of the emotional scenes in that movie. And he's really masterful.
Oh, seriously. Wow.
Yeah. And so then we get to next, we have the Elephants on Parade sequence. So this is one of our lovely Disney sequences where characters get drunk, which they loved back then. They had Dumbo getting drunk. They had Dopey getting drunk. They had Dumbo getting drunk. They have Pinocchio getting drunk. Like it's a thing.
Yeah,
they really liked. And you have that long sequence in Sleeping Beauty where they're just drinking. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. They liked to do that.
Yeah. It's really interesting because this definitely has a feel of sort of the surrealism of the time, and that you would get with something like Salvador Dali, the whole Pink Elephants on Parade. I mean, it just feels so different than the rest of Pinocchio in so many ways. And it's just, but I kind of love that. I kind of love when animators, you can tell they were just like, have fun with this part. Go for it. Go crazy. I enjoy it.
Go for 'em completely.
And they have tried to kind of ape it a couple of times, but I still enjoy those copies for the most part. I mean, the worst example is probably not probably, the worst example is the yodeling song in Home on the Range. That definitely has a little bit of a Pink Elephants on Parade.
You could tell there was a bit of a Pink Elephants on Parade influence in that Home on the Range sequence. Definitely not up to par, but you could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also the biggest other one is definitely the Heffalumps and Woozles in Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. Right.
For sure.
Yeah, totally. In Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sequence was I grew up on Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, and I saw that sequence before I saw Pink Elephants on Parade. So
yeah.
So which was good because I didn't have to compare it. So that was a good first one to see. As soon as I saw Pink Elephants on Parade for the first time, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
That was, to this day, my favorite scene in a Disney movie is Pink Elephants on Parade. You have no idea how much I love that scene.
What do you think of that scene, Stanford? It's so surrealism. It's so different.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I just think it's creativity unbridled, and because it's all just so random. I mean, when elephants are everything from camels to automobiles to, and then the skaters and all the different ways that they are drawn and portrayed to. Yet it's also colorful. I love that they keep that black background basically for the sequence, and I love the color palette that's used.
I love how completely unpredictable that scene was.
You have no idea.
Now, Walt wouldn't actually meet Salvador Dali until 1944, so it was well after this, but his animators were definitely influenced. And one of the sad things, if you were looking at the perspective of Walt Disney, is he really tried to create the like perfect, in his eyes, the perfect working environment where he had a whole school where his animators could go to school and different things. And so from his perspective, when there was the big strike, it was very, very devastating to him, and he felt a huge sense of betrayal.
He took it so personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so he really wanted his animators to embrace new styles, to be kind of aware of, to be artists and to not just be technicians. And I think that's probably why he would allow a sequence like Pink Elephants on Parade to be in a film that is supposed to be kind of serviceable. You know what I mean? As far as the animation, it's supposed to be kind of not as creative as, and then you have this wacko sequence.
Yeah.
But yeah, the animators were definitely aware of surrealism, and they were definitely influenced by it for sure.
Yeah, very cubist art movement type feel in that sequence. It was very modern.
Yeah,
I think it really adds an interesting touch to the overall narrative flow as well, because it's almost like it provides a bit of a break, and it helps because you've had this really heavy emotional scene, with the baby mine sequence, and then this kind of leads up into the more fanciful element of the film when we learn that Dumbo, can fly. And I think it's a wonderful kind of, a break and a bridge, into kind of act 3, of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with you on that.
I think so too. And so after this, then Dumbo and Timothy Q. Mouse wake up very high up on a tree. And they're like, how did we get up on your tree? I don't remember because they were drunk. And the crows, this is when we get introduced to the crows, and the crows are laughing because they can't believe it. How the heck did an elephant get up in a tree? So what do you think, Eli, about the crows? What is your feelings about them?
Okay, this is what I wanted to talk about mainly when I came to this podcast. Okay, so now there is a very understandable negative reaction to the crows in this movie, because what a lot of people are reacting to when they see the crows is that, okay, these crows, it's implied that based on how they talk and how they look, and based on the fact that African Americans have voiced the majority of the crows in the movie, that the crows are caricatures of African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
But the characters of African Americans that the crows are portraying are mostly things about African Americans that were popularized in minstrel shows, and the minstrel shows of the 19th century were created by white people who wore blackface, and a lot of the things that those white people portray, a lot of things that those white people put into those shows are the things that the crows portray, which is that they are like the way they talk, sort of exaggerated, and they have like a happy-go-lucky attitude towards everything, and they also like to make fun of stuff, and that's how the crows are portrayed. It's sort of like these, like, there are caricatures of African Americans the same way that white people caricature African Americans in minstrel shows, which makes the crows seem like they were for white audiences, not black audiences. That is the main reason why people have a problem with the crows.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the main reasons why I don't have a problem with the crows is because the crows are, yeah, it's got like a feeling of a minstrel show, but those shows are based on actual people, like the black people that the shows are based on.
Mm-hmm.
They are real, and they are allowed to act the way that these crows do. And I have a black family. I have seen black people act like these crows, and they talk the same way. And so it's not like it's an unauthentic portrayal of the way black people are. It's just that people don't like the idea of white people like using that for their own entertainment. And so it's like, hey, I think that these crows should be like taken back by black people and say, hey, these are the kinds of characters that should be around, because like this is an authentic way we speak, and white people, just because they used it doesn't mean that we can't use it. We're the ones who invented this way of talking, how we talk. So I just think we should take it back and say that it's a positive portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Because
well, I feel like you can do both. Like, you can say that it's problematic and still find a way to appreciate it. Like, that both things can be true. And you're right that different communities can find ways as a survival tactic, probably most of all, to take those things that are meant as kind of maybe slightly mocking in tone, and then use it as kind of a badge of honor in a way sometimes that you can have. Which is really, really great, really cool. And even back in, this is not some like new thing, because I hate that when we're, not that we shouldn't analyze the hits of the past, but I do find it very annoying when we're like, oh, well, that nothing in the past was good enough. We can't see the value also, that we're just like these pedantic hipsters. That drives me crazy. But even back then, like that, I forget the name, but the head of the NAACP spoke out against it. It's not like this is just something that's sort of a modern, ooh, we're looking back at it and we're concerned kind of a thing. It was a discussion even back then.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And another thing I want to mention is that the portrayal of the crows in the movie is not a negative portrayal. The characters are actually really good characters, and they actually sympathize with Dumbo.
Yeah.
And as soon as Timothy Mouse gives that speech about how Dumbo is being made fun of, and then they start feeling sorry for him, and then they try to help him by like giving him the confidence to like overcome his like problems in his life and giving him this ability to fly with the magic feather. See, now they're actually really good characters.
Yeah.
Like they're positive.
Well, even somebody like Whoopi Goldberg, she said that she has a desire for the Crows characters to be merchandised by Disney because those crows sing the song in Dumbo that everybody remembers. So it's not a universal feeling on the film.
Eli, one of the things that I've wondered over the years, particularly watching Dumbo as an adult, right? That the crows reminded me of like Cab Calloway or some other kind of African American actors of the time period, in films that were probably made by white people again, but I don't think all of them necessarily were, or they had primarily, just depending on the cast. But is that an accurate description, do you think, on my part, to think that that's also almost like what the filmmakers were going for, with those characters?
I'm glad that you brought that up, actually, because Ward Kimball, Rachel was just talking about Ward Kimball. Yeah. He was the primary animator on those crows. And he was the guy who animated them. And he said that the crows were based on actual Black people that he knew, because Ward Kimball was a musician and he knew a lot of Black musicians, and he based the behavior of the crows on them. So even though people are reminded of minstrel shows when they see the crows, he actually did base them off of actual African Americans. And that's what I'm talking about when I say that the crows actually are authentic portrayals of African Americans, because a lot of African American people do act like the way those crows do. They're always telling jokes and making fun of people and like having a good time. And so just because white people used that in their shows, it doesn't mean that Black people can't own those qualities again. And it was actually a authentic portrayal of Black people, and based on what Ward Kimball is saying. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, so they were voiced by all African American actors, and they were members of the Hal Johnson Choir, that was a popular choir of the day, and so it's an interesting thing. And you do get quite a powerful speech from Timothy Q. Mouse. He says, "You ought to be ashamed of yourselves, a bunch of big guys like you, picking on a poor little orphan like him. Suppose you was torn away from your mother when you was just a baby. Nobody to tuck you in at nights, no warm, soft caressing trunk to snuggle into. How would you like being left out alone in a cold, cruel, heartless world? And why, I ask you, why? Just because he's got those big ears. They call him a freak, the Laughingstock of the circus. And when his mother tried to protect him, they threw her into the Clink. And on top of that, they made him a clown. Socially, he's washed up, But what's the use of talking to you cold-hearted voids? Go ahead, have your fun, laugh at him. Kick him now that he's down. Go on, we don't care." So that's pretty strong.
That's a good scene. And as Eli was mentioning too, the crows, they're emotional. They're crying. They're moved by this talk. And
you know what? When I watched this movie as a kid, like the crows, I never saw them as negative, like stereotypes or anything. I loved the crows, and I still do, because there's nothing negative about them. They're very good characters. I think they're one of my favorite Disney characters.
Well, and they're the ones that give the feather give the idea for the feather.
I was saying they enable Dumbo.
And they get him to fly. So there is that positive, and that's what I think, like, the overall, even if that does bother you, which I totally respect if it does bother people listening, I just feel like the overall message of accepting people that are different and being kind and being tolerant, and that what makes you different is really what can make you the most special. That's such a positive message. And so I would say if we can focus on that, I think that, I don't know, I just think we should.
I agree.
Because
I agree too.
It's an interesting thing. And that song is really fun. If I See an Elephant Fly, just as far as the song, it's a really enjoyable song.
And I love how they're back for the reprise. Oh, I sorry I interrupted you, Eli.
Yeah, I said I loved that song. It's a great song.
Yeah, I do too. And I love how they bring it back at the very end too, how the crows are flying there with Dumbo, so fun. So great.
Yeah.
You know what? Also, I also want to iterate that if anybody else has a problem with the portrayal of the crows in the movie, just like Rachel was saying, I respect your opinion about it. I'm not going to try to force you to like the crows because I understand why you wouldn't. So, but my opinion is that they're good characters.
Yeah, I think that's good. And then we get the final scene at the circus, and Dumbo loses his feather, and so he thinks he can't do it, and Timothy basically convinces him he can do it, and then he is able to fly. And so that's sort of the end message. It's just really sweet. And you see Dumbo and his mom together, and you get the headline in the paper and the, everything else. And it's really, really sweet. So that's Dumbo. It's a really lovely little Disney film, I think. I actually have it in my ranking, my most recent ranking that I did, at number 11 in my rankings. I have it pretty high because I just really enjoy it. I have Frozen at 12, and I had Lion King at 10. So
wow, that's actually pretty close to where my ranking of Dumbo is. It's pretty up there with all the canon animated Disney movies. It's definitely one of my favorites.
What quadrant would you have it in?
Yeah, see, Eli, I have a hard time actually ranking him, so I have him in quadrants of excellent, really good, and then not good. It's excellent. It's one of my all-time favorites. I absolutely love Dumbo. I love everything about it.
When we finish this, I have to force you.
Dan, I really am gonna. I agree. I've tried. I believe you, but I will. I promise. I'll do a ranking. I'll force myself.
All right. So we're gonna figure out the number generator. We're gonna use our little number generator. Figure out what we're doing next month, because we didn't want to do it in chronological order because it just felt boring to us. So here we go.
All right, Stanford, does this mean that you don't know what your favorite Disney movie is?
Oh, I do know. Well, it's kind of a tie, but my all-time favorite is Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, that's a good choice.
Yeah, I go back and forth between Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is, I think, probably the best, but I think that Little Mermaid, just with nostalgia thrown in, is my favorite.
What's your favorite, Eli?
My favorite's The Lion King.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think we all have good choices.
Yes, I do too. Can't go wrong.
Okay, so we have a cute one for next month. We have number 51, which is, I think, let me make sure.
It's Winnie the Pooh, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to make sure. Yeah, so we have next month. We continue to avoid the package films. We haven't done a single one. But next month we're going to talk about the 2011 Winnie the Pooh. So that'll be really fun. That'll be good. That has some nice, scary moments we talk about with Halloween and everything. I think that'll be fun. So there we go. That's what we'll talk about next month. So
right.
This has been so much fun. I really love talking about Dumbo with both of you. Thank you so much, Eli, for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Eli. It's wonderful to talk with you. Thank you so much.
And
yeah, thank you, Stanford.
Eli, how can people follow you on social media, all that fun stuff?
If you want to follow me on social media, go to Twitter. I'm at eJunkie2014, and if you follow me there, I'll send you the links to everywhere else I am on the internet. So just go to Twitter.
Great. And Stanford, where can people find you?
On Twitter, I'm at Stanford Clark, and then I have a movie blog and podcast, which can be found at moviespastandpresent.com.
Great. Yes, and you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes and YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And we have the Talking Disney podcast on Anchor as its own thing. So have the link in the description. You definitely want to check that out if you just want to listen to just Talking Disney. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, take a look at that. You can also find me at the Hallmarkies podcast. Things are getting really busy there too, so it's going to be fun. And so let us know in the comments section what you think.
You always get awesome user comments. You've got such great listeners.
Yeah, so we did get, so Alex Klepp, he says, the title character is absolutely adorable. I love the baby mind sequence. Timothy Q. Mouse is great sidekick. The crows are definitely a product of the times, but are still good characters and has a wonderful climax and ending. And then our friend Jonathan said, Dumbo is a classic in its own right. So we got that. So yeah, let us know your thoughts if you have any insight into the things we talked about, your opinion on Dumbo. Let us know in the comments section or on Twitter. We love to talk about it. And yeah, that'll be great. And we will, we'll talk about Winnie the Pooh next month. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.